Welcome, everybody. This is the fifth quarter, week 3 of the NFL. My goodness, man. You talk about soap opera drama. We don't even need daytime soap operas anymore. Best thing you need to do is tune in Monday mornings and just find out the carnage that's left over of any NFL football player who's now basically going to have a record or a rap sheet by the time the week is through. I'm your host, Cal Lee, and with me I got my man Mike D, and this is what we do every single week. We discuss the hot topics of the NFL. Mikey, what's going on, my brother?
What's going on, Cal, man? Another crazy week on and off the field in the NFL, huh?
I got to tell you, man, last week we were just talking about one situation with regards to Ray Rice, and then now we find out more and more. There are now, a plethora of players who are either under allegations of domestic violence, under allegations of child abuse, just recently with Adrian Peterson, another situation just coming up with Jonathan Dwyer, Greg Hardy, who's already been convicted of domestic violence. This is just really become an incessant trend, and I hate saying it because people are going to look at this as saying it's a witch hunt, but ultimately this is what it is. There is a serious problem and anger management issues with a lot of these players, and I can't use the excuse that it's because they play football. This is a personal issue that a lot of these guys have right now outside of the football field, and it's now manifesting itself where it's becoming a black eye on the league.
Yeah, I was listening to Colin Cowherd today on the Herd, and he had a great statement. He says, as much as the NBA gets a rap as being like filled with bad dudes, he's like, you never hear about these guys getting in trouble. He's like, every once in a while you might get a DUI or a dude who, smokes a little weed. But because we know basketball players, we see them with their, their no sleeves shorts, and they don't wear helmets. We have a much visual perception of them. And we see a dude who looks like he might be a rough and tumble guy, and we're like, yeah, that dude's probably going to get into trouble. Whereas in the NFL, these guys are protected by their helmets and they're in all that equipment, and we tend to forget that what we're asking them to do on a week-in and week-out basis is basically kill each other, to the point where, 35% of them are going to retire with dementia, and it's a modern-day gladiator sport. So I'm not totally surprised or shocked when I hear about any of these allegations or anything that comes like that, because the truth of the matter is, these dudes are putting that on like every day. Practice, games, they're killing each other. I mean, you watch Hard Knocks, and those dudes for 4 weeks, they murdering each other. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not surprised that some of these guys can't turn it off, and I'm not surprised that they have the highest incidents out of all the professional leagues. It's always the NFL dudes that get in the most trouble, the worst trouble. So I don't know, man. It's funny. I think that as an NBA fan, I feel like they get a bad rap because they're pretty good. They said so far this whole offseason, there's only been 2 instances in the NBA of something happening. One was a DUI where the guy barely tested positive, and the other one was Greg Oden's situation. He's technically not signed to a team right now. In season, in the last 2 weeks, 5 dudes from the NFL have been arrested. So, it's crazy to me. It's just crazy.
And let's not even forget about the situation with Godson from the New York Jets. He was a part of this team over the last 2 years, and both times he's not been able to get on the football field because of off-the-field issues. One, substance abuse, and then finally the Jets had to cut him because, again, he got arrested for another arrest. Under the not under the influence, but with regards to being caught with, I believe it's with marijuana. It's just kind of disheartening. But you know what? You brought up a very good point in last week's show where you said a lot of this accountability also has to be held to the standard of the players' union. DeMaurice Smith.
Yeah.
He basically is supposed to be an advocate for the players, but as equally as you are an advocate for the players, you also need to be advocating the players' conduct policy and the understanding that in order for him to effectively do his job, the players need to do theirs. And part of that is just stop getting yourselves in trouble off the field. I don't know what it's going to take, but it's going to definitely take a collaborative effort. And a lot of it does come down to sole responsibility. We can't coddle these guys. You know, look at the situation with Jameis Winston out in FSU. You know, this kid can't keep himself out of trouble. And what do you think what do you think is going to happen when he comes to the NFL, when someone offers him first-round draft pick money? You know what I'm saying? And while we say, yeah, those are red flags, there's still going to be an owner who wholeheartedly believes that he can, quote-unquote, rehabilitate that player or throw enough money at him that he can basically sit himself down. They come up with the Des Bryant rules, and yet they find a way to defy it and go and do their thing. There's a fine line, man, but I ultimately think that if we still want to see some of these players out in this football field, the NFL, Players Association, and I think the communities that are involved with the teams and the franchises and the owners, all collectively are going to have to help the situation so that these players start helping themselves. I mean, at the end of the day, if we've tried and exhausted every single effort and they still can't get it right, then these guys don't deserve to be playing footballs on Sunday.
You know what, though, Cal? I thought there was an interesting development this week. They developed that new list that Adrian Peterson and Greg Hardy were put on. It's like the commissioner's unable to perform list, where you're still getting paid your game checks, but you're deactivated effectively. Usually in the NFL, if you get deactivated, you don't get paid for the week. But what they're doing is they're deactivating them with pay until their situations are resolved. And that's an agreement between the Players Association and the commissioner. And I think it kind of works because what they're saying is, like Jonathan Dwyer, you just been arrested for headbutting your wife and throwing something at your 18-month-old kid. Now, who knows how that's going to play out in court? And that might take 2 or 3 months to play out in court. The Cardinals know one thing for sure. The next 3 months, they don't want to have anything to do with that dude in terms of being related to the team, right? But if he should happen to be found not guilty, the Cardinals also want to be in a position to bring him back. So I think the suspending him with pay and he's not allowed around the team like Adrian Peterson and Greg Hardy are right now, I think that's a nice, happy medium, because what the union is saying is we're still going to get you your money for the time being, you know what I mean, while you're on this list. So I think it kind of works a little bit better because the union's kind of saying, like, we know these dudes shouldn't be playing, but we can't just totally say, yeah, suspend them and not pay them. So it's like a happy medium a little bit, and I think it is a little bit of a deterrent because you're losing money for the future. Because at any time the team does decide to cut you, then you stop getting paid. So if Minnesota wanted to part ways with Adrian Peterson right now, they technically could stop paying him as of right now. So it's kind of like a wait-and-see type thing, and I like that a little bit better.
Well, I agree with you on that, and I think the other thing, too, is that, and it's been said through a lot of different outlets, media outlets, different shows that have been covering football, not just one specific show. But I think the NFL and I think the NFL Players Association needs to be more proactive than being reactive with this situation. If you are the Players Association, the moment that you find out that a player has been arrested or is under suspicion or there are allegations of anything regarding domestic abuse, substance abuse, or whatever the case may be, they need to start opening an investigation and not waiting for the NFL to have its own investigation. They need to get out ahead in front of this so that when a situation occurs and these teams are planning to put them on this exempt list, they will be able to know the facts and be able to figure out a remedy to start helping these players put themselves in a position to do whatever they got to do to resolve the issue, to get themselves right, and to get them on the football field. Because unfortunately, I still think that there's a gap that happens even if you put them on this exempt list. It's a waiting game. And within that waiting game, if these guys do exhibit issues, domestic violence, anger management, whatever the case may be, what are they doing within that time frame? Are they actually setting themselves on a path, on a course of trying to get themselves right for this? Or are they just basically waiting this out to say, well, based on the public opinion or whatever the assessment's going to be, if I'm not found guilty of it, I'm in the clear? I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that to prevent this ongoing, people have to be more proactive on the situation so that this does not become a recurring issue, and it also sets a precedent to all of these players about what's going to happen and do they want to endure this process as well too.
But, let's be honest, there's no deterrent. There's no deterrent because if there was a deterrent, people would be watching the Ray Rice situation unfold and not get arrested. And since the TMZ video came out 2 weeks ago, 3 more dudes have been arrested. So I mean, like, if that's the way you are, that's the way you are. And I really truly believe that maybe some people will change after being put in that spotlight, but a lot of people won't, unfortunately. And that's just the dude that you're dealing with. Tell you the truth, like I was surprised about the Jonathan Dwyer thing. I never saw any of that from him. He's a running back. He's not, like a wild, crazy maniac of a player. But apparently this is something that's been going on with him for a long time. So, I mean, we don't really get to know these players. Like, we don't get to see their public personas, and we don't get to see them displaying their emotions and everything outside of the gladiator arena, so to speak. I mean, I like it when I see a dude playing football on Sunday and he's hype and he's turned up. But, do I want to see him like that on Wednesday night when he's, smacking his wife around? No, definitely not. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a catch-22. I don't know. I mean, like I said, you would think these guys would learn, Cal, but they don't know no better, man. I really believe that if it's in them, it's in them.
Well, we'll see what happens. And, I mean, still, this is an ongoing issue and a much more recurring theme. Guys like Adrian Peterson are franchise guys. It's, you wonder what the Minnesota Vikings are going to do if this situation plays out. And Adrian Peterson does have to face, being involved in court. More importantly, also being convicted. This is a situation where, Adrian Peterson right now is the most popular athlete in Minnesota. There's no Kevin Love there any longer. So, if you're the Minnesota Vikings, Mike, what do you do? How do you start helping people transition themselves a little bit further away from the idea that the AP, all-day AP, is no longer going to be on that football field if that indeed becomes the case because of this situation?
I think by putting him on the suspension list, you give him time to deal with his family issues, deal with the stuff he needs to deal with. See, here's the thing that always got me about his case. If that was my son, right, and his mom sent him back to me and he was bruised up like that, the next day I would have been on the news, right? Like, she's not the famous parent. He's the famous parent. So I would have been right out front on TMZ the next day talking about Adrian Peterson beat my son. Obviously, even if she was concerned about it, it was the doctor that notified the police and everything like that. So she was kind of like accepting over the fact that that's the way he disciplines the kid. And maybe she was probably upset with it and expressed it to him, but she wasn't looking to really do nothing like this and make this kind of an issue. And they're not even together, you know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, I feel like by putting him on this list, maybe Minnesota gives himself a little space from the situation. Hopefully he resolves it and everything works out in court. He don't have to do no jail time. And maybe, in a couple of months before the season's even over, they can put him back on the actual roster and get him back in the swing of things and keep him on the team. I mean, if he misses the whole season because of this, then I'd be willing to bet that they look to, deal him or do something in the offseason because he's going to need a fresh start. But if he could come back this year and have a couple of good games, he'll make people forget real quick about missing him.
All right, my brother. So, listen, well said. And, that's how we do. So let's go ahead and get right into the crux of the show. First and goal, man. First topic of conversation. Two particular teams that I don't think that we anticipated or expected to be 0-2, the Indianapolis Colts and the New Orleans Saints. Both the Saints and the Colts have not looked impressive in these first 2 weeks. It's an off and on switch. In one part of the game, their offense looks good. Another part of the game, their defense looks decent, but nothing has really meshed well. And more importantly, this Saints team defensively was a top 5 defensive team in the NFL. This year, I mean, they're probably one of the worst defenses over the first 2 weeks, and we've even seen Sean Payton and Rob Ryan, going at it on the sideline. So you can obviously see that the tension is mounting and desperate. It's desperate times right now. We're only 2 weeks into the season. Give me your assessment about what we're seeing from both the Colts and also from the New Orleans Saints, and how come these teams are sitting at 0-2 right now in the first 2 weeks of the season.
I think the Saints should be a little nervous, and I think the Colts should be okay with their situation, because The Saints, all right, let me start with the Saints. The Saints don't look so great on offense, and that's been their calling card forever, right? I mean, Drew Brees, he's looked very average so far. Jimmy Graham is a mutant monster, and so he's still going to be a mutant monster. He had like 9, 10 catches the other day, touchdown. The dude's a monster. But they just lost Mark Ingram for a month. He's going to be out for a month. Pierre Thomas has never really been anything more than a second-string running back. Marcus Colston is entering like his 10th or 11th year, and he's starting to really show it. He fumbled away the game against Atlanta single-handedly. I mean, they don't have really dynamic young playmakers. I've been hearing about this Brandon Cooks kid a lot, but he had a nice week 1. Nothing really came from week 2. They really like the Kenny Stills kid from Oklahoma, who was a rookie last year, but he's hurt and he's banged up. So, you know, I just don't know if they have the offense that they used to sustain a terrible defense. You know, there was plenty of years where their defense was not so great. Even the year when they played Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl, their defense wasn't so great, but you know they played well, and then they got that big pick on Manning in the Super Bowl to win the Super Bowl. But it was their offense being so ridiculously good that it covered up for them. So in my opinion, the Saints could be like an interesting problem because a lot of people were picking them to be like Super Bowl contenders. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts on the Saints?
Well, let's kind of look at the numbers real quick. I mean, Drew Brees is 56 to 62, 66% completion percentage, right? I mean, that's not bad. That's pretty good.
But he's dinking and dunking.
No. I understand, but QBR rating of 90. That's not bad. I mean, that's good. But here's what to me is the telling tale: 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That means he's not putting the football in the end zone. And to your point, you just brought up dinking and dunking. He's dinking and dunking, but he's not stretching the field. He's not getting the ball to his playmakers. Graham and Colston are being doubled, and they're putting the onus on guys like Ingram on their second, third, receivers to make plays. They're not making plays. You don't have Darren Sproles, so you don't have that third down threat, the guy that can actually take a play that may only need to be 5 yards and extend it out to be a 25, 30-yarder. He doesn't have to put it in the end zone, but he makes it easier for Drew Brees to do this. First 2 weeks of last season, he probably was already he probably already had an 8-to-1, an 8-to-2 ratio in touchdowns. So the fact that he only has 3 touchdowns in 2 games for a team that's supposed to be a high-powered offense, you do have to be a little bit concerned if you're the New Orleans Saints. And we can easily say that the defense of the New Orleans Saints is a one-hit wonder because of what they did last season. But I'm going to bring this up because I felt that this was one of the things I've noticed, and this seems to always be the case with the Ryan brothers, Rex and Rob. Whenever you give these guys accolades, whenever you start giving them momentum and reason to pump up their chest, do not be surprised if they get a little bit too big-headed for their own good. Now, I'm not saying that this is all the New Orleans Saints, that this is all Rob Ryan's fault. But he is the defensive coordinator. You got to know your personnel. You got to know what your personnel is capable of. And in these first 2 weeks, I have seen that this personnel has been absolutely exposed. Now, whether or not this extends itself out to a better portion of the first half of the season, whether or not Ryan figures out a way to make certain adjustments, and this is just, just you slow off the gate in the first 2 starts. But I feel like this may actually be the trend of what you're going to see from this Saints defense, which lends itself to the idea that when he got hired to be the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, his motivation was to prove to Dallas Cowboys that it wasn't his fault why that defense was so bad. So look at what they did last season with the New Orleans Saints defense. Now you give him all the accolades of how great a job that he did, making that defense look like, a Seattle Seahawks-like type defense. And now look at what they look like right now against teams like the Cleveland Browns. So I'm not surprised too much by it a little bit. I understand why people would give the Saints, those predictions about being Super Bowl possible Super Bowl participants. But at the same time, it doesn't surprise me because when you're dealing with the Ryan brothers, this is a Jekyll and Hyde situation.
Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, the one moment they look good, and then another moment, this is, hey, we are who they thought they were. So,
Cal, not only did the Browns beat them, but the Browns beat them without Josh Gordon, Jordan Cameron, or Ben Tate. So, I mean,
right?
some would argue that those guys aren't so great anyway. I mean, Josh Gordon had one good year, so some would argue like it's a little too early to consider him great, even though he led the league in receiving last year. Ben Tate is a career backup, but, you know, was finally getting a starting job in Cleveland. And Jordan Cameron is a nice, young, talented tight end, but he's always hurt. They lost Cameron and Tate in the last week, and Gordon suspended, and they come out and they put up 28 points or 30 points on you. What kind of? I mean, like that's atrocious.
It's inexcusable.
Now, in terms,
inexcusable.
Yeah, and then in terms of the Colts. See, in the Colts, I could be much more optimistic for a couple of reasons. Houston has looked good so far, so the Colts should be wary because they do have them in the division. But the Colts played arguably the two toughest games so far this year, right? I mean, Philly is a favorite to win the NFC East, and most people are saying they could be a surprise and maybe come out of the NFC for the Super Bowl. I heard numerous pundits pick them. People love this Chip Kelly offense, whatever the case may be. But they played Denver. You know what I'm saying? Like, they played Denver and Philly, who are arguably two teams that are both 2-0 and two teams that, you know, can put up points. So I'm not so surprised that, and Indianapolis was in both of those games. Like, Denver was giving them a beating, and they came all the way back and almost won that game, and they lost by a touchdown. And, you know, they had Philly pinned down. They couldn't put them away because, you know, the Philly Darren Sproles is a beast. But I wouldn't be so upset being 0-2 right now because, you know, you got some real easy games ahead of you, right? You got 2 games against Jacksonville this year. You got what's the other team in that division? Why am I drawing a blank?
You're talking about the Titans.
Yeah, you got 2 games against Jacksonville. The Titans haven't looked that great, even though I like them a little bit. They lost to the Cowboys last week. So you got 2 games against the Titans. Houston, you know, even if you split with Houston, I mean, I think they could do some things in the division, and then I think they'll play their out-of-conference schedule, and I think they played probably their 2 toughest games of the year already.
All right. Well,
so in my eye, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, let's go ahead and just kind of dissect a little bit about the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts, when I saw them play against the Denver Broncos, it to me looked like big brother versus little brother. While everyone is praising Andrew Luck, and I think part of the issue is that they want to have a reason to validate Peyton Manning for who he is and Andrew Luck for who they want him to be. Andrew Luck has done an excellent job within the first few seasons with this Indianapolis Colts team. Is he projected to do more than what Peyton Manning had to work with in his first couple of years? I'm not so sure. I can definitely tell you that when you have a quality head coach like Chuck Pagano, you got some quality playmakers that still have something in the tank, and Reggie Wayne, a young budding star, and T.J. Hilton. Andrew Luck has got opportunity to do some great things. But in order for him to ascend himself beyond a guy like Peyton Manning, he has to be big. He has to be greater than Peyton Manning. So that was a tough test in itself. And you're playing in Denver. So I was never confident about the Indianapolis Colts going out there and just beating a Denver Broncos team who has a bad taste in their mouth after getting thrashed by the Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl. The Denver Broncos are thinking on a much different level than the Indianapolis Colts. So the only way that the Colts would have won that game is really just catching the Broncos sleeping, which they almost did, to their credit. The Philadelphia Eagles, though, that was a contest that I thought that the Colts should have won. Regardless of how good the Philadelphia Eagles could be, I felt that the Indianapolis Colts are kind of like one level ahead of the Philadelphia Eagles in the sense that they were a team under Arians when Pagano was dealing with leukemia, put themselves in a position to play in the playoffs. And then the following year, they won that division when everyone thought it was supposed to be the Texans. So they've exceeded expectations, but they are exactly where they need to be. They're making their progressions. Where the Philadelphia Eagles, a lot of it is still based on the question marks of buying into Chip Kelly, all that other kind of stuff. So I felt that this was a game that the Colts really should have won. Now, they had the game basically for 3 quarters, and then they muffed it up. So it happens. But now you look at what they got in the next couple of weeks. They play against the Jacksonville Jaguars, then they play against the Tennessee Titans, and then they play against the Baltimore Ravens. So just as quickly as we could be talking about the Colts as an 0-2 team and probably dead in the water, they could easily wind up being 3-2, and the circumstances in their own division could put them right back ahead of the pack, depending on what will happen to the Houston Texans in the next couple of weeks. So this is a division in which the Indianapolis Colts, and to your point, they have time and opportunity, because outside of the Houston Texans, who we still don't know whether or not they are who they were last season. They can't be any worse than what they did last season. But can they be better than the Indianapolis Colts? I don't know if whether or not we're going to be able to truly see that just within the first couple of weeks. I think that these are going to be 2 teams that are going to be playing neck and neck through the course of the division, going all the way. So I think the Colts are fine in that regard.
Yeah, me too. And, one thing that we didn't mention about the Colts, they got a lot of talent around Andrew Luck. I mean, Ahmad Bradshaw looks the healthiest I've seen him since he left the Giants, probably 2 years before he left the Giants. Trent Richardson, I feel, is a bum compared to what people consider him to be, but he's still a serviceable running back in the NFL, especially when he's pounding the ball like he did the other night, 70-something yards right up the gut for 3 yards a carry. So he's hurting people when he hits them. And Reggie Wayne looks great coming off of that knee surgery. With T.Y. Hilton and a couple of young tight ends, I mean, they got a lot of weapons. So I wouldn't be surprised if they played themselves right back into a nice little 4-game winning streak, and then they're sitting at 4-2, and people are like, what? These guys were 0-2? I don't believe it. You know what I mean? Saints, on the other hand, they got a lot. They're in a tough division this year. Carolina looks really good so far. And Atlanta is putting up, they got like 116 points already against Tampa Bay right now. It's on while we're broadcasting, and they got about 100 points already. So Atlanta looks good, man. I don't know. I think the Saints, we always talk about those teams that are in the playoffs and then miss the playoffs. Saints might be that team this year.
Weren't we doing that last year with the Atlanta Falcons? The Atlanta Falcons just they look bad, and we kept giving them the benefit of the doubt. It'd be really interesting to see what Sean Payton does now, because this is a critical week 3, I think, for him. This is a Saints team that I think is in a foreign place. They've never been in this position. They've had a lot of obstacles, outside interferences that have hampered this football team from being as good as what they've potentially been in this window that they've been playing under. But now, with the teams being as good as they are, like you said, in the NFC South, they really don't have room, they don't have that luxury of losing games, like they did against the Cleveland Browns. And if that's going to be the case, you're really going to have to start wondering, how quickly, Sean Payton is going to have to start making adjustments, because, at the end of the day, New Orleans Saints, they can't be the New Orleans Saints anymore. They don't have that. They don't have that luxury. Everyone expects them to be a power team, a power ranked team in the NFC, at least in the NFC. As far as the NFL goes, they may have to wait in line with the way they're playing.
And they only got a few more years with Drew Brees, because he's getting up there in age. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, I mean, he's got to be like 34, 35, right?
Yeah, definitely. All right, my friend. So let's go ahead and keep it moving. Second and goal, man. RG3. Another injury to the big man, the quarterback for the Washington Redskins. RG3 dislocates his ankle. What do we make of this situation, Mike? I mean, this is now no longer becoming just a concern. This is really becoming a red flag to see that RG3 has not been healthy, I don't think, once in his NFL career. This is this third injury that he's now suffered, and I just find it hard to imagine that these type of injuries, he's going to be able to recover 100%, And I don't know what kind of RG3 people are expecting now, given these type of injuries that he's suffered this far.
Yo, this dude is just frail, man. I remember watching him at Baylor, and I remember saying to myself, like, he's frail. Like, he's not a big dude. My man is frail, and he shows it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he definitely looks frail. And so when he started getting hit and started actually, you know, taking shots, I was like, man, this guy better be careful. And then, you know, he had the unfortunate injury against the Seahawks in the playoffs, and the team fell apart. And, you know, people were like, all right, well, he'll be okay next year. He'll come back. He'll be better. And then all last season, he looked like absolute trash because he wasn't 100% healthy, and he was trying to play a different game, right? And so you're like, all right, well, you know, this year's going to be different. And then the dude comes out and Derrick Roses it up. You know what I mean? Like, he comes out and just hurts like another body part that has nothing to do with anything. So now he's got the ACL he tore in college. He got the ACL he tore in the pros. And then the dude's just rolling out. He jumps to throw a pass, lands, and his ankle pops out of the socket. It's like, are you kidding? Like, I mean, how freak of an injury can you have? And then I was listening to Stephania Bell on ESPN on the podcast, the Fantasy Football podcast, and she said that he doesn't have the broken bone or no fracture. She's like, that's like a 1% chance of that happening, because when you dislocate your ankle, it tends to crack the bone. So she said that's an indication that he's got loose joints. Oh, great. Something more to look forward to. What's this dude going to do, get hit and cough up his skeleton? Like, I don't understand. Like, he literally is not built to take that kind of punishment. And his his genetics ain't cooperating with him right now.
What exactly is it that people saw in RG3 in the combine, in the tryouts and the sessions? I mean, you know, I'm sure he was impressive in the interview process, but I don't understand.
No. Like, Cal, the kid's got a cannon. He's got a cannon. He can throw the ball like 100 yards, and he's fast as all hell. But that's all contingent on not anybody chasing him. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, the minute you put like a defense in the situation, and he has to actually do it at full speed, it's like a different world. You know, it's like he's not on a demo reel anymore. So I could see why somebody would fall in love with him at the combine, because at the combine, nobody's chasing you, right? In pro day, nobody's chasing you. And the truth of the matter is, they didn't really fall in love with him, did they? They kind of took what was left over, because Indianapolis took luck. So Washington wasn't going to pass on him. It was, it was either luck or RG3, right? So if Indy would have took RG3, I'm sure they would have been very, very excited to get Andrew Luck. So they were in second place, and they got what was left over. I mean, I understand why they took him. I'm baffled. I mean, the dude is just frail.
I guess I'm more so baffled because all these injuries are injuries outside the pocket and him running. That's and where everyone keeps saying you need to learn how to slide. You need to learn how to, stay in the pocket, deliver the football. I just wonder how tough is RG3 in the sense that can he take a hit in the pocket? Because at some point, I don't think that he's going to have the mobility to jump and do the things he wants to do outside the pocket if he continues to keep going through these injuries. I say that in the sense that when you're as explosive a player as RG3, reminds me a lot like Russell Westbrook and Derrick Rose. You're not going to be able to change this guy's mentality. He's got to be who he is for him to think that he's going to be effective. If you start messing with that, you start messing with him psychologically of how he needs to be, which is probably the reason why it's been so difficult for him to be a better passer than what he's exhibited. Because I don't think that he likes to stay in the pocket to take a hit. I really don't.
Well, but like last week in week 1, he showed that even though they lost, he showed that he gets the offense, the Gruden offense, right? He was like completed like 72% of his passes, and they were all short, like little pop passes, and he's getting the tight end involved and all this great stuff. So people really liked the way he looked in that loss, even though he didn't have the big stat line, right? The funny thing is, though, is that he wasn't scrambling on this play. He got flushed out of the pocket, and he was throwing the ball on the run. I mean, I don't care. Even Peyton Manning has to do that sometimes, bro, because the pocket collapses and you got to make a play. Nobody gets to really be a true statue anymore in the pocket, right? I know Peyton Manning ain't going to take off and run it, but every once in a while he's got to flush out to the right and maybe drop a ball off to a receiver coming back to the ball. Everybody could do that. If you can't do that, you can't be an NFL quarterback. So, I mean, the dude's ankle popped out of the socket. He didn't get hit. He didn't even get hit on the play. So, you know, at what point is it just kind of like that dude's house must be built on a cemetery or something? He got some poltergeist problems because the dude is, you know, it's mystery. That's mystery injuries. I don't know. I don't know what to say. He better go see a priest or something. Somebody come over the house.
All right, let's go ahead and fast forward this real quick, and I want to get your assessment of this, because now that Kirk Cousins is a quarterback, if Kirk Cousins helps this football team win football games, and listen, we had this happen last year. We were just talking about this off the air with regards to the Chicago Bears when Jay Cutler was injured, and McCown had basically helped this franchise, you know, stabilize themselves and stay ahead in the NFC North. They eventually gave up that lead to the Green Bay Packers, you know, but a lot of people kept raising the question that the Bears should have never put Cutler back in there if they were winning football games with McCown. If Cousins helps this Washington Redskins team, you know, be a top team in the NFC East, and I'm predicting that the timing of him coming back might be towards the second half of the season, right? With RG3, I believe that he's going to be gone for like a couple months.
Well, they said 8 weeks is conservative.
Right. So let's just assume that by we're getting to week 3. So by week 13, there's that idea that he comes back, and Cousins has this Washington Redskins team miraculously at let's go 9-4, right? I'm just throwing that out there. If you're Dan Snyder, if you're Jay Gruden, do you entertain the idea of actually putting RG3 back on that football field after what Cousins would be doing for you at this point? Because at 9-4, you can't tell me that they don't own the NFC East, or at least have a share of that lead if the next contending team is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles.
No chance, bro. Let me explain. I don't think they would be in that position, but if they're in that position, he don't see the field. I guarantee you, if they were, you know, 9-1 or 7-2 going into week 8, week 9, and he's supposed to be like, you know, almost approaching comeback time, he would have a miraculous setback. I guarantee you. And he needs a few more weeks.
That phantom report that shows up.
Yeah, that, you know,
RG3 had back spasms when he was kneeling over to feel that dislocated ankle.
He strained the quad or something, you know, like that. That's like, you know, one of those a high ankle sprain. I love the high ankle sprain, right? So I just feel like that wouldn't surprise me. I also feel like the Redskins played fantasy football in that draft. You know what I mean? Because they took Kirk Cousins like 2 rounds later. I think he took him in the 3rd round. They took Cousins or the 4th round. So, like, they basically hedged their bet. And so, you know, when you were saying, like, I don't know what they saw, maybe they saw that, yeah, we got a lot of potential in this kid, but he's frail. Let's go make sure we get another kid the same age that we like. And, you know, worst comes to worst. And, I mean, there's got to be something to be said that last year when Cousins was, you know, people wanted Cousins. There was a market for them to trade him. And they could have got something really, you know, some good draft picks or something for him. And they said, no, thank you. I know the Bears talked about acquiring him when Cutler went down. And I know a bunch of other teams, Green Bay, looked into it. And, you know, a couple of other situations. I know the Raiders were very interested in the quarterback last year. Cleveland was very interested in the quarterback last year. And they said, no, thank you. Tampa Bay, no, thank you. We'll stick pat, because they knew that they needed that insurance policy. I don't think it's a coincidence that you take a dude 3 rounds after you take the number 2 overall pick. in the same draft, and you keep them when everybody wants them. You know what I mean?
Now, I completely agree with you. So what happens from here if that is the case, that Cousins winds up finishing out, he's the starter, RG3 doesn't see the light of day on that football field. If you're the Washington Redskins, do you really start considering the idea about possibly moving RG3?
You part ways. You part ways with RG3. I would give him the Donovan McNabb exit, where you basically kind of cut him, buy his contract out, whatever it is. Let him go make money somewhere else. Nobody's going to trade you for him because he's coming off of 2 years of being injured straight. Nobody's going to trade you for him. So you're probably better off just cutting him, whatever the case may be, and then you give Kirk Cousins an extension and you see what you got. I don't know, man. That's my personal opinion. But what I think is going to happen is they'll be about 500. It'll be like week 10 or 11. They'll be middling in the middle of the pack, and they'll bring back RG3, and he'll dislocate his pelvis or something. Walking to the sideline, answer the phone on the sideline. He'll dislocate his elbow, talking to his offensive coordinator in a booth or something.
You're tuned to the fifth quarter. Cal Lee, Mike D, discussing the hot topics in the NFL. Man, be sure to get at my man Mike D. Mikey, let people know where you at, my brother. You got your thing going on with CCD. What's your Twitter handle, my man?
Yeah, man. You can catch me on Twitter, ccd_blog.com. At ccd_blog. You can catch me at ccdblog.com as our website, pop culture, entertainment stuff. Great stuff over there, man. You should check it out. It's good things.
All right, most definitely. All right, man, let's keep it moving along. 3rd and goal. Let's talk about those Philadelphia Eagles while we're at it, right? Philadelphia Eagles, very impressive right now. They are 2-0. Great win against the Indianapolis Colts. Game this on the road. And the interesting part about it is that Nick Foles has looked good, but he's not looked as nearly as explosive as he looked last season. But it kind of doesn't matter when you got Shady McCoy and Darren Sproles as your 2 running back tandem in a system that is authored by Chip Kelly. This team, man, you saw it on when they played the Colts. They couldn't find the other side of the football field. They couldn't find the Indianapolis Colts territory the first half of the game. And then in the second half, it's like they absolutely lived on that side of the football field. And when you got those 2 running backs, man, they're very explosive. So now the big question is, Mike, could this very well be the most explosive, the most dangerous running back tandem in NFL history?
When I proposed this topic to you, I was being 100% serious because, obviously time is going to have to tell on this situation. They've only been together for 2 games. You know what I'm saying? But I can honestly say without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, I cannot think of another combination of tailbacks on the same team that have been this good in my lifetime. I truly can't. And what I mean by that is Darren Sproles would have this role that he has in Philadelphia on any team in the league. And he's like 31 years old. He's been in the league like 10 years, right? So he's not no young spring chicken, but he's a special player. He's unlike anybody else. You can't say that Danny Woodhead is like him or that Shane Vereen is like this. They're not like him. He's a mutant, okay? And then McCoy, hands down, is easily a top 3 running back in the league in any order you want to put it, with Adrian Peterson, Jamal Charles, and him. Any order you feel like doing it, at worst, you're going to get him as number 3, right? So, Cal, seriously, you've been watching the NFL for a long time, man. We're getting old now. Can you honestly remember ever a team ever having 2 guys this good in the primes of their career? I remember some teams that like would have a guy who was a lot older, so he was like like a star, and then they had like a lesser guy who was pretty good. But the only thing I could even think of mildly involves Sproles, and that's when he was with LT in San Diego. And he wasn't Darren Sproles yet. You know what I'm saying? He was special, but he wasn't special. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That
Darren
dude
Sproles
is
was
special.
Darren Sproles was not as good during the LT era in San Diego as what you're seeing from him right now. I'll be honest with you. The only tandem that I can really think of, and I don't even think that tandem could really be as explosive. I think as dangerous a tandem that I can remember was a combination of Christian Okoye and Barry Word when during those years of the Kansas City Chiefs. And
I know,
that's because that was because they were so punishing. You know what I'm saying? Like, and part of it too was because Kansas City never had a good quarterback, so they had to run the football. I thought if you had like a decent quarterback and help offset like the passing, like if you could put Christian Okoye and Barry Word in today's game, I swear they would be mashing cats on that front line because the defensive line now is much smaller and much quicker. So Okoye and Word could be more dangerous as far as through the middle. But explosiveness though, I can't remember a tandem like McCoy and Sproles be able to run through the insides with explosiveness and to hedge the edges with explosiveness the way that they do. And at any given down, 1 through 4, they could easily get you first downs. It could be 1st and 25. And the dangerous threat of a screen pass to McCoy or to Sproles has to be in the mind of a defensive coordinator. I mean, that's really tough, man. I can't argue with you on that. So,
Cal, but you know, I thought for sure that you would bring up Barry Word and Christian Okoye because that's the only thing I could think of. But I just looked up Barry Word's stats. Barry Word only played in the NFL for 7 years. You know how many yards he rushed for? 7 years. You know how many yards he rushed for? 3,000, 2,900. I mean, that's terrible. Like that's not even a backup. You know what I'm saying?
But you know, but here's the thing though. You got to understand the dynamic of the Kansas City Chiefs. I wasn't talking about that from a statistical standpoint. I'm just talking about that from a standpoint of how you Yeah. That's all that I was saying. When you say tandem and I think about the potential and the danger, had they been on a team that knows how to run that knew how to run those guys, Barry Word's stats wouldn't have looked like that.
All right, but hold on. No. They were on a team around the same time, and I just looked up Okoye. Okoye played 5 years. He rushed for 5,000 yards. So he had like 1,000 yards a year. What I'm trying to get at is, I think right now, Sproles in his career, he's had a 10-year NFL career that's been as good as those two guys combined, right? And then McCoy, the first however many years he's been in the league, he's in his like 5th year, I think, or something like that. He's just looked Hall of Fame-ish. You know what I'm saying? So we had to dig up two guys that are, you know, we remember them being monsters because they had some good teams during that stretch. But, like, in reality, in the grand scheme of things, they weren't even really great, like, good running backs.
Yeah, from a statistical standpoint, no, there's no question.
And a longevity standpoint, too. I mean, exactly. They were only,
the punishment was too much, especially for those guys and how they were being used.
But I'm trying to think, like, I'm going over it in my head and going over it in my head and going over it in my head, and I'm trying to think of all those, you know, great 49er teams, and I'm trying to think of, you know, these Minnesota Vikings and, like, all these, and all I keep getting is one really good guy and, like, maybe a flash in the pan backup type guy. And you're looking at, in my opinion, I think Darren Sproles will probably be a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. He keeps this up for another 2-3 years with the numbers that he has and all the returns and everything like that. He'll be a Hall of Famer. And I feel the same way about McCoy. So you figure they signed Sproles to a 3 or 4 year contract. They got McCoy locked up. I hate to see these guys lining up across from me for 3 years in a row. If this is what it's like 2 games in. I mean, you know, I welcome anybody. Get at me on Twitter, at @CCD_blog. Get at me at Twitter and tell me if you can name 2 backs on the same team at this point in their career that are better than these 2 guys. Go ahead. Get at me. Make me feel stupid because I can't.
Very nice, my friend. Very nice. So with that being said, how now does this bode well about people's predictions about how good the Philadelphia Eagles can potentially be? Now that we're talking about how dangerous a tandem these guys are, and Nick Foles, who has not been the explosive quarterback that I think everyone's expecting Chip Kelly to make him out to be.
Well, listen, in 2 games, Foles has thrown for almost 700 yards. I mean, I know a lot of it is coming on screen passes and stuff to Darren Sproles, but hey, that's the offense. You know what I'm saying? And let's be honest, who are they starting at wide receiver? Riley Cooper and Jeremy Maclin? So they don't got that home run guy in Deshaun Jackson anymore. You know what I mean? I really like the tight end Ertz. I think he's really good. Ertz is a really solid player. Selleck, who's the second tight end now, he was a quality NFL tight end for a long time. And then I think Cooper and Maclin are serviceable. And they got that kid Jordan Matthews. He's like a NBA center. He's like 6'9" or something like that. He's a rookie, but you know he could turn out to be okay. So I mean that's the system. I think Foles looks just fine throwing the ball. I just think that they need to work on not getting themselves in such a deep hole because their defense isn't spectacular. And part of coming back from a deep hole is that you got to stop the other team eventually, right? You could go down 17-0, but in order to come back, you eventually got to stop that team. And I don't think that they have a defense that could get, you know, that stop when they need it every time yet. But I'm worried about Philadelphia, man. They got a squad, and they're the only team I think in NFL history to come back in the first 2 games of the season, or in 2 games in the same season, down more than 14 points at halftime. It's like crazy stats, man.
I tell you this,
I'm worried about them.
I tell you this much, you would. You're glad Atlanta is not playing the Philadelphia Eagles. They would have definitely made this game interesting because Tampa Bay definitely isn't. Tampa Bay may need to take a page out of what the Philadelphia Eagles have done the first 2 weeks of the season. All right, man. Let's go ahead and let's get right into that good stuff now. Let's talk about that fantasy talk, my brother. Fantasy talk, fantasy football time. You know how it is. So what are the goods we have for this week, Mikey D? How's your team look so far this week?
I mean, I had some nice pickups this week. I got some waiver requests that I put in. I really like the kid Paul from the Washington Redskins, the Niles Paul, I think his name is. He's a tight end. He's stepping in for Jordan Reed. And Jay Gruden's offense, the tight ends always get targeted the most. So he had a real good game with Kirk Cousins the other day, and I think he could have a good, potential. So I picked him up. But my pickup of the week definitely was Delaney Walker. I have Jordan Cameron on 2 of my fantasy teams. So they knew pretty early on that he wasn't going to play this week. But it was kind of day-to-day. So Sunday morning when I woke up and I saw that Jordan Cameron wasn't going to play, I needed to get a tight end in 2 leagues because I only carry 1 tight end on my team. When I have a quality guy like Cameron or in my other team, Vernon Davis, which he got hurt too. But I picked up Walker in both of those leagues, and I ended up doing in one of those leagues, and I ended up doing really well with him. I mean, he seems to be Jake Locke's favorite target, and I could easily see him being a top 5 tight end fantasy-wise this year. And he's pretty much went undrafted by most people because people are going to take the names, the Gronk and the Graham and the bigger name tight ends. So a lot of people are making those guys, but meanwhile, Delaney Walker's silently killing it. So I like him. And then going into tonight, I really like to pick up a Bobby Rainey because Doug Martin was supposed to miss some time. But when you getting beat 35-0 on national TV, your running back can't help very much. You know what I'm saying? So I think I like Rainey as a player for Tampa Bay, but this week it ain't working out so good.
It's an interesting point that you made regarding Doug Martin. I think now you're starting to see a trend with Doug because he got injured last season and missed some significant time for the Tampa Bay Bucks. Man, what are you getting now? What are you sensing from a guy like Doug Martin? Because he had an explosive first year in the league, and then now all of a sudden, man, it's like see that productivity really cut in half because he's not on the football field due to these injuries.
But he didn't have a real track record to begin with. I mean, he had his rookie year. He had a good year. okay, you're fresh. You know what I mean? You never had to deal with the rigors of a 16-game season. You never had to deal with getting hit by guys that like Patrick Willis. You know what I'm saying? You never had to get Clay Matthews, across the head. So, I mean, okay, you look good for 1 year. He's from Boise State, right? Martin?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, he didn't see a defense for 4 years, probably. Right? I mean, he didn't see his quarterback under center for 4 years. They would come up to play in the spread for 4 years in college. I mean, I'm not surprised that he takes up a beating, and when he does, he's not effective. But in truth, and I'll say this really quick, he didn't look good in the first couple of games last season before he got hurt, and he was out for almost the whole season last year. And when he came back this year, he don't look good either. So I don't know what to say about that.
I don't think Tampa Bay knows what to say about that. I mean, it's a good thing that they all don't play fantasy football either, man, because it's kind of a shame. I like Doug Martin. I had projected him to be, maybe a top 10 running back within the next few years after his rookie season, just because, he's short, stout, he has a little bit of explosiveness to him, but he can't stay on the field long enough. I think I pre-ranked him this year. I think I pre-ranked him at like 12 or 13, which is, middle of the pack for running back for RB1s. So that would be.
I didn't hate him.
No, we don't want you on. We don't want you don't want to be on your hate 'em list. So your fantasy faux pas for this week, man. Who are the guys that you really to suggest to people to stay away from?
Oh, man, well, I mean, this was a kind of weird week because you got to be careful. You can't trust all the reports. I mean, Adam Schefter said that Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffries with 75% chance they weren't going to play, right? 75% chance. Adam Schefter, Shefty, the NFL guru of all gurus, said there was a 75% chance that both of them weren't going to play. So you know what that means, right? The dude I played in one of my fantasy leagues, he sat Jeffries. I was like, thank God. Meanwhile, you figure one of them wouldn't play, right? Nah, both of them played. Jeffries had a good game. Brandon Marshall had 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, you got to play your studs. Forget about matchups. You can't look at matchups and things like that with your best players. I mean, I have Reggie Wayne on one of my teams, right? And I start him. I start Kelvin Benjamin, wide receiver from Carolina, as my third wide receiver on one of my teams. Maybe I look at the matchup and I say, oh, they're playing Seattle this week? Do I got something better? But if I got Brandon Marshall on my team and he's going to suit up, I don't care who they're playing, I'm putting him in. And that's the way you have to be. You know what I'm saying? You have Eddie Lacy, you can't worry about him having a concussion. If he's playing, you got to play him. You have Andre Ellington, that's a dude. So I learned my lesson not to take things for granted by watching other people not play Marshall and Jeffries this week and lose out on all them sweet points, especially Brandon Marshall, man. 3 touchdowns in one game, woo! That's fantasy changing. That'll change your life in a week.
But that's got to be something that I think, sometimes you kind of outcoach yourself. Or your strategy involving, well, if my player doesn't suit up, I got to go and get somebody else or look to put somebody else in there. I've often felt like when you are involved in fantasy football, because of the way that they structure the injury report, unlike, say, baseball, unlike, say, basketball, where it's kind of fluid through the course of the week, you'll know by the next game if this guy's going to play that next game. The next 4 games he'll probably not play. Or like in baseball, the next 3 games he'll probably not play. With football, these coaches wait until the very last possible minute. So if you got guys that are probable, you know what I'm saying? Even if that probability is a 75% probability they may not play, like you said, you got to play them. You got to still put them in. It's basically you're rolling the dice. You take the L that you're not going to get any points if he sits down, but you actually
but
you increase your chances of acquiring quality points, because if that's one of your stud players, the fact that you didn't sit him down and he comes in and he produces for you is a lot better than messing with the guys that you were sitting there mulling around trying to figure out who you could replace to get any kind of points from, you know?
So, like, I talked about Allen Hurns last week as a great pickup. So in week 1, he had 4 catches, 110 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he was the only bright spot on Jacksonville, right? And so I said, he's the man. He's the #1 receiver in Jacksonville. So a lot of people went out and picked him up. And I have him in every league, but I didn't play him. I mean, I want to see a little bit more consistency from him. You know what I mean? So against Washington last week, he ends up twisting his ankle in the first quarter, and he had like 1 catch for 10 yards, and that's it, right? So a lot of people got at me and were like, yeah, nice pick, dude. You told me to pick up Allen Hurns. I played him, and, dude, he got hurt. Like, who knows what he would have did in that game, you know what I'm saying? And I still like him as a player. And I'm glad he's on my roster. And, you know, if he comes back next week and has another good game, do I get to call you back and say, hey, dummy, I told you. Well, you picked him up late and you dropped him, and now I got him again. So sometimes you got to wait on a guy a little bit, and you can't account for injury. Did anybody really think Tom Brady was going to break his leg a few years ago? Did anybody really think that was going to happen? Would you really tell me that Bill Belichick would play Tom Brady in that game in the preseason knowing he's going to break his leg? It's called an injury or an accident because it's an accident. It don't happen on purpose. So, I mean, like, that's the biggest thing. People, prepare yourself for injury. Injuries are going to happen. I lost tight end on 3 separate teams in one day. How you lose, and you know, it's not like a wide receiver or a guy that you would own. I lost Jordy Cameron and Vernon Davis in 1 week. I lost all 3 of my tight ends on all 3 of my teams. You got to be ready to go, man. Pick up somebody else. Keep it moving. Keep it moving. Keep it moving.
I completely agree with you, man. I completely agree with you. Well said. I mean, that's just the luck of the draw. You know, it's why it's on a week-to-week basis you have to be cognizant of these things, but you can't jump the gun. You got to stay true to your morals.
Even the top 3 running backs that were chosen this year, it's AP, Jamal Charles, and LaShawn McCoy. AP might be out for the season. Jamal Charles is hurt, and LaShawn McCoy is the only one that's healthy, and he hasn't really played good yet. So, I mean, and Matt Forte is number 4, and he's playing like shit. Right? So, I mean, truth of the matter is, fantasy is fickle like that. You can't, I mean, every pundit in the world, every person in the world that says they know something about fantasy football, those are the top 4 running backs this year. 2 of them aren't playing this week. One of them is playing, you know, good in McCoy. And Forte hasn't done really much anything so far. So you tell me how it works. You know, I don't know. I don't know. Matthew Berry couldn't help you right now.
Probably not, man. You tuned to the 5th quarter. Cal Lee, Mikey D. Fantasy Pick'em, Fantasy Freaks, and Fantasy Footballs. My man Mike just dropped it. Make sure that you get at my man Mike at ccd_blog. Let's go ahead and get right into our Week 3 picks, man. Finalize the show. Round it out pretty properly. What were the records last week, my friend?
You had to bring that up, right? All right. Well, I had an awful week. I went 6-10. Nothing you can do about that. I mean, a lot of weird games, a lot of games that I saw going one way, and you know, I'm not really sure about certain teams yet. I think we'll get a better handle on stuff. You went 9-7, my friend, so you stayed above the Mendoza mark. Congratulations on that.
I try sometimes, man. I try.
I mean, you better build the lead now because it's going to come crumbling down later. So,
spoken like a true Sherman. Spoken like a true Sherman. All right, so let's go ahead and get right
into it. You see that right there? That's that Super Bowl trophy right there, bro.
All right, so should I give you a mulligan on this Atlanta-Tampa Bay game? Do we just go ahead and just rest it on the idea that you got this pick right because we thought that the Atlanta Falcons was going to win this one?
I'm going to be honest with you. We won't count it in the stats this week, but I was going to take Tampa Bay. So if that's any consolation, I really like Tampa Bay in this game. So no thank you. I will take my mulligan and appreciate it. Because right now, as we sit here, the score is 42-0.
Listen, I tell you right now, Matt Ryan and Devin Hester and Julio Jones like Tampa Bay in this game. They love them right now. Probably wish they played them every single week for the rest of the season with the way that this score is going.
It's 42. It's 42-0. There's 8 minutes left in the third quarter, not the fourth quarter. The third quarter. Ooh, baby.
All right, let's go ahead and get it started, man. San Diego, they go to Buffalo. Buffalo Bills, man, looked impressive already in the first 2 weeks. The San Diego Chargers, not bad themselves, man. Where are you looking at with this one?
I'm going to go with Buffalo for the simple fact that Ryan Matthews is out for the Chargers, and they got to come across country. I don't like West Coast teams coming across country. I'll take Buffalo.
You know what? I like the way that San Diego played against the Seattle Seahawks, and I know most people usually find like this is one of those games where Buffalo might catch San Diego sleeping, but Phillip Rivers, man, as much as I don't like the guy, I got to respect the guy. He's a top 3, top 4 quarterback, whether we like to speak about him or not, and he's proven it. And if him and Antonio Gates are going to continue to work that field, I find it hard-pressed that Buffalo has got a defense to be able to stop that tandem. Keenan Allen is coming into his own. I like San Diego in this one, man, even though I might buy into the idea that Buffalo might squeak out a win on this one. I like San Diego. All right, Tennessee taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. Who you got, my brother?
This game is where? This game is in Cincinnati?
In Cincy.
I'll take Cincinnati.
Yeah, I like Cincinnati in this one. Their defense is good. Dalton is playing decent. Tennessee, they're still trying to find their own with Jake Locker. I can't. This is just a bad game for them to try and find themselves. They were able to pull out this win. I might believe that Tennessee can win every single game the rest of the season. Baltimore Ravens taking on the Cleveland Browns. They are playing at Cleveland.
I love Cleveland in this game. I love what they're doing out there. With the guys they're doing it with, Isaiah Crowell, Brian Hoyer, Andre Hawkins, a wide receiver. He's another great fantasy guy you should look at, Andre Hawkins. Miles Austin is like a fantasy zombie reincarnate. They got some players out there. I like Cleveland in this game. I think the Ravens are, a little bit inflated.
The Cleveland Browns are probably playing like the Cleveland Cavaliers. Let's put it like that. But the Cleveland Browns are playing some pretty good football. I like what Mike Pettin is doing with this defense. And he's doing a really good job of working around a team that is depleted offensively. These guys are starting to show, their moxie a little bit. And while I was impressed to see what the Ravens did to the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is what always happens when they play in the AFC. They play in the AFC North Division. So I'm liking Cleveland in this one because I really think that Baltimore is the type of team that likes to return the favor on their home turf. Green Bay Packers taking on the Detroit Lions. Great division game. They're playing at Detroit.
Pack.
You like the Pack?
Pack.
I don't know, man. I like Detroit in this game. I for some reason, I'm liking offensively what they're capable of doing. I'm still not sold on Green Bay's defense. I think it could come to a shootout, and I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to what kind of defensive line is going to show up to get at Aaron Rodgers. If Fairley and Ndamukong Suh do the dirty, I think that the Detroit Pistons can squeak out one of those home wins, and we can start questioning about why the Packers, have these kind of disappointing losses. But I just think that the Lions are a good football team, and they're bound to win one good game against a good team on their home turf. So I'm liking this one.
Watch out for Jerry Rice.
Jordy Rice.
That's my boy right there.
Jordy Rice. All right. Dallas is heading to St. Louis to take on the Rams.
Ugh. Oh man.
The look on your face says it all.
I'm gonna go with Dallas because DeMarco Murray so far this year has been the #1 running back in the NFL, bar none. There's no question. Through 2 games, he's had the best 2 games out of any running back, and St. Louis can't stop anybody on the ground. So, I'm gonna go with St. Louis. I'm gonna go with the Cowboys against St. Louis.
If you didn't mention that portion of the thought, I would have brought it up. I like the Cowboys only for that reason, because other than that, St. Louis just has a way of winning some games, and Dallas has a way of losing some games. that neither one of them have any business winning or losing to. So this could very well be a game that I expect the Dallas Cowboys to win, albeit I would not be surprised, though, if the St. Louis Rams wound up beating the Dallas Cowboys because, like Stephen A. says, the Dallas Cowboys are an accident waiting to happen.
True story.
All right, the Oakland Raiders taking on the New England Patriots.
Patriots.
Yeah, I'm liking the Patriots on this one. It's going to be a tough season for the Raiders. All right, the Minnesota Vikings going to New Orleans to take on the Saints, who've been looking like the Aints the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, but they home this week. They love that Superdome, don't they? So
and they're gonna especially love a Minnesota Vikings team that doesn't have AP.
I'm gonna tell you right now, you need to watch out for. There's a guy I forgot to tell about fantasy football. Kyrie Robinson from New Orleans, with Mark Ingram being hurt. Kyrie Robinson is why they let Darren Sproles kind of go to Philadelphia, because he's like that dynamic kind of young scat back type dude. Him and Pierre Thomas, they're gonna put a hurting on them. I love the Saints in this game.
Yeah, I think the New Orleans Saints, they're gonna find their mojo offensively and defensively. I think they explode on the Minnesota Vikings. Houston Texans head to MetLife Stadium to take on an embarrassingly bad New York Giants football team.
Texans.
I think the Giants are going to win this football game. As much as I like the Texans and what they do defensively, I got to believe that this is just one of those games where the Giants, if they don't win this one, this is going to be probably one of their worst seasons yet. Coughlin is going to find a way to get these guys to play. And I just don't buy into the Texans running off 3 or 4 in a row, even though this is a schedule that favors them to do it. And when you see this Giants and how they've played the first 2 weeks, it's almost easy to assume that they're just like that. But I think the Giants, they're better than what they've looked these first 2 weeks.
I hope you keep picking the Giants. We'll be even before I know it.
Yeah, okay. Very nice. Very nice. Washington Redskins taking on the Philadelphia Eagles at Philly.
I'm going to have to go with Philadelphia here. I mean, they usually split these things. They usually split these, and they usually home and home. I mean, I'll take Philadelphia because I think Kirk Cousins, he's got to show me something, and if they win this game, I'll believe a little bit more.
It's not so much Washington's offense and Cousins showing me something. It's Washington's defense and whether or not they can stop Philly. And
number one in the league right now. You know that? Washington has the number 1 defense in the league right now. I was shocked. I almost fell out of my chair this morning when I saw that.
Well, not after this week. I'll tell you that right now. I think the Philadelphia Eagles is gonna move the ball against Washington. And even though it's a division game and it's going to be close, I still think that it's going to come down to explosive plays. And Philadelphia has more explosive players that can put that ball in that end zone. So I'm liking Philadelphia like you in this game. But, listen, to Washington's credit, they've been the best defense so far in the NFL. But now they're going to play against some really good offensive teams in the next couple of weeks, so we'll see how they hold up against them. The Indianapolis Colts head out to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars.
I think the Colts right at the ship.
I do too, but I do buy into the fact that the Jaguars are going to make this a difficult game. They always play against their division teams tough. So if I'm Indianapolis, I should not sleep. I would expect Andrew Luck to have a great football game, but they're going to need that because this is the type of game where if the Colts sleep on the Jags wind up pulling out an upset. And, that's what happens with the Colts sometimes. I mean, even when they have Peyton Manning, they just have a tough time playing against the Jags in their division. But I think the Colts wind up winning this one. I think they're going to play angry, too, knowing that they should have won that game against Philadelphia as well in a short week. So they don't have to rest their mind too much on it and let it dwell. San Francisco heads out to Arizona to take on a tough Cardinals football team.
Yeah, I like Arizona in this game. Well, you know what? Hold on. Let me back up. I like the 49ers in this game because I heard that Carson Palmer is probably not going to play. And I can't see a backup Drew Stanton beating the 49ers. But if they had Carson Palmer, I would have probably picked the Cardinals in this game. I'm going to have to go with the 49ers on default just because of injury. I hate to say that, but it's true.
If you gave me Mark Trestman's offensive system in Arizona, I would have picked the Arizona Cardinals to beat the San Francisco 49ers. But I got to believe after the way the San Francisco blew that game in the second half, after being up 17 points in the first half against the Chicago Bears and letting Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffries just run moxie on them all over the place in the second half, I'm expecting Dante Whitner to be Dante Hittner all day long on anyone catching the football that's wearing a red jersey on the other side of that football field. So I'm looking at San Francisco to win the football game. My question mark is how good offensively is San Francisco going to be, because I'm telling you right now, man, I'm not sold on Colin Kaepernick. And I'm not sold on this offense that the San Francisco 49ers have been throwing out on that football field. They're going to need to figure this thing out, man, because this is another team that they have a lot of weapons, but somehow it's just not clicking. And against teams like the Cardinals, there's no excuse not to be putting up 20 points when you got guys that are explosive playmakers like Kaepernick, Frank Gore, Davis, Crabtree, and those guys.
Yeah, I think Davis is going to miss this game too. So.
Yep. Kansas City taking on the Miami Dolphins at Miami.
Oh man, I don't know how, but I'm going to pick Kansas City on the road because it's starting to cool down a little bit in Miami. It's not as hot the first couple of weeks but they're going to miss Sean Moreno. So begrudgingly, I'm going to take the road dog, and I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. But I wouldn't be surprised if Miami plays a good game.
Yeah, I think Miami plays a good game, but I like Kansas City a lot better. I think if nothing else, this is the part of the season now where the Kansas City Chiefs start to make their mark on where we're going to see them by the time we get past the halfway point. Are they going to be a team that's contending in the play, to be in wild card contention? So games like this, I think they need to win them because they can't afford to lose any more games already in this first half of the season than they already have. The schedule gets tougher for them down the road. So I'm looking at them, and I think that they're going to right the ship, and a good way to do that is against a good Miami Dolphins team. But like your point, the fact that they don't have an effective running game without Sean Moreno, I can't see how Miami is just going to air it out all over the place against the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs secondary might actually play a little bit better than they have the first few weeks. The Denver Broncos, they head to Seattle, man. Super Bowl rematch. What are you looking like on this one?
This is tough, man. These are tough decisions to have to make only in week 3. You know what I'm saying?
I know, man. It makes my 9-7 record look a lot better because I have no idea what it's going to look like after the end of this week.
I gotta take Seattle because they're going to be at home, and we've seen what they can do to this Denver team, and this Denver team is like an exact mirror image of the team last year. You know what I mean? You take out Emmanuel. You take out Eric Decker, insert Emmanuel Sanders. Wes Welker is going to be back for this game. You take out Sean Moreno, insert Monte Ball. It's like the same team. So I don't know. I got to go with Seattle. That's my gut.
The only reason why I'm going to go with Seattle is because I'm not sold on Denver's defense as of yet. Now, this team through the course of the year, and Denver has shown that. Remember, in the beginning of the season, while the Denver Broncos looked like the most explosive team in the NFL history, their defense looked like the most explosive team as well, too. Like, they were just getting blown all over the place by other teams. And so Peyton Manning had to drop 50 points almost every single game in order for them to win these games. This is one of those games where I'm not going to question whether or not Denver can move the football against Seattle or Seattle can stop them defensively. I more so question what kind of offense Seattle is going to come with at home against a revamped Denver Broncos team. Defense. So if the Denver Broncos actually look like the Denver Broncos over the last couple of weeks where they've looked pretty good defensively, then I might actually give the edge to the Denver Broncos because of that. But if the Seattle Seahawks shows that they can actually move the football, they're as explosive as ever like they were last in that Super Bowl game, then I don't think Denver has any kind of chance. So just on that premise alone, I think Seattle wins the football game, but I'm going to be more interested in seeing what kind of defense the Denver Broncos is going to have on that football field. On the road, under that hostile environment, and can Seattle move the football with that kind of ease against a team that should be pretty good defense, better than what they've looked all last season, under John Fox. All right, man, and finally the Monday Night Football game: Chicago Bears taking on the New York Jets. Impressive win by the Chicago Bears, and an unimpressive loss by the New York Jets. Who plays angry come Monday?
I'll take Chicago. Jets suck. Eric Decker might miss the game.
I like the Chicago Bears because they just have a better team offensively, but I still don't know what I'm getting from them defensively. I tell you this much. If I see Geno Smith slinging the football all over my Bears secondary, I might just have a conniption because that should not happen. I'll just have a conniption. That should just not happen. If I'm the Bears defensive front line, I'm all over Geno Smith to the point where I want to see Mike Vick. I want to see Mike Vick come and try and take him out. But, we'll see. I got the Bears like you do, but, I'm a little iffy on it somewhat because, after what I saw the first half with the Bears against the 49ers, I don't know if I could take much of that nonsense again in this game. So.
Fair enough, my friend.
You said that with such confidence.
I like the Bears this week. I mean, I know that's your team, but I like them because the Jets are just. Ugh.
That's why you wear the other green, right? Of course.
The other green.
Other green. All right, man. Awesome show this week, Mike. Any parting shots for our peoples out there that's catching on with the fifth quarter with us?
Yeah, man. I just keep tuning in. I hope you guys like the show. Share the show. I mean, tell your friends about it. I tag a bunch of people on Facebook. I hope you guys tag them on top of that. And just share it with all your friends, and let's make it happen, man. We love having the show, and we love having you guys be a part of it. Get at us.
Most definitely, man. So for the fifth quarter, Cali, Mike D, we appreciate you guys. Continue to tune with us, giving you all you need to know regarding the NFL, giving you our picks, and also talking that fantasy football talk as well, too. Live via satellite, Jersey, Brooklyn, holla back. It's the fifth quarter, guys. You guys have a great week.
Salute.